The dust never settled properly in the archive chamber. It hung in the air like tiny stars caught in the pale blue light that came from the ancient tablets mounted on the walls. Daewon sat at his desk, his eyes red from staring at symbols that no living person could read. Around him, the vast archive station Kepler-7 hummed with the quiet activity of 1,000 researchers, all searching for answers in the remnants of dead civilizations. He had been studying the precursor language for 15 years. 15 years of his life dedicated to understanding words carved into stone by hands that had turned to dust 10,000 years ago. His colleagues thought he was wasting his time. Perhaps they were right. Still at it? Hana's voice broke through his concentration. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, wearing the grease-stained coveralls of an engineer. "It's 3 in the morning, Daewon." He didn't look up. "Time doesn't matter when you're this close." "Close to what?" "You've been saying that for 5 years." She walked over and looked at his screens. They were covered with strange symbols, mathematical formulas, and wave patterns. "These people are gone. Their language died with them." "Languages don't just die," Daewon said quietly. "They sleep. They wait," Hana sighed. She had heard this before. Everyone had. Daewon's obsession with the precursors was legendary in the station. The precursors had built machines that modern science couldn't explain. They had shaped entire star systems. Then they had vanished, leaving behind only ruins and silence. "Thalmir wants to see you," Hana said. "He's not happy about your latest resource request. You asked for computational power that could run a small planet. I need it." Daewon finally looked at her. His face was thin, drawn. He hadn't been sleeping well. "I found something, Hana. The language isn't just written. It's meant to be spoken," she blinked. "Spoken by who?" "Everyone who knew it is dead. By anyone. By me." He stood up, excitement creeping into his voice. "Look at these patterns. The symbols aren't just representing sounds. They're representing frequencies, tones, vibrations. The precursors didn't write words. They wrote music." Hana looked at the screens again, trying to see what he saw. To her, it still looked like nonsense. "Even if you're right, so what? You say some words in a dead language, and then what happens?" "I don't know," Daewon admitted. "But I need to try." The next day, Thalmir called him to his office. The Cal overseer was tall and covered in smooth blue scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now, they were a dark, annoyed purple. "Daewon," Thalmir said, his voice like gravel sliding down metal. "Your work here is valuable. But this obsession is becoming a problem. You're using resources meant for practical research. The council wants results, not theories about ancient music." "Give me 1 more week," Daewon said. 1 week to test my theory. If I'm wrong, I'll drop it. I'll move on to something else." Thalmir's scales flickered between purple and green, the Kel equivalent of considering something carefully. 1 week. "But Daewon, when this fails, and it will fail, you need to accept it. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved." Daewon spent the next 6 days preparing. He synthesized the sounds based on the patterns he had found. The ancient tongue, as scholars called it, required the speaker to hit precise tonal frequencies. Human vocal cords couldn't do it naturally, so he built a device that would modulate his voice as he spoke. On the 7th day, Hana agreed to be present. She brought recording equipment. "For posterity," she said with a sad smile, "so future researchers can see how dedicated you were." Daewon stood in the center of the archive chamber, surrounded by precursor artifacts. He had chosen a simple phrase, one that appeared repeatedly in their texts. Based on context, he believed it meant something like awaken or listen or perhaps begin. He activated the modulator and spoke. The words that came from his mouth didn't sound human. They were too pure, too precise. They resonated in frequencies that made his teeth ache and his bones vibrate. The air in the chamber seemed to shiver. Then nothing happened. The artifacts remained cold and dead. The tablets on the walls didn't glow. No ancient machine roared to life. Hana put her hand on his shoulder. "You tried. That's more than most people would do." Daewon felt something break inside him. 15 years. 15 years for nothing. He nodded slowly and turned off the modulator. That night he sat in his small quarters, staring at nothing. His terminal was off. He couldn't bear to look at the symbols anymore. He had failed. Thalmir was right. Some mysteries weren't meant to be solved. At exactly midnight, his terminal turned on by itself. Daewon sat up, his heart suddenly pounding. The screen glowed with a soft white light. No programs were running. No one had sent him a message. But something was happening. Symbols began appearing on the screen. Precursor symbols. They flowed like water, forming sentences, paragraphs, entire pages of text. Daewon recognized some of them. They were coordinates. His hands shook as he translated. The coordinates pointed to a sector of space called the Void Graves. It was a forbidden zone, a place where ships went missing and instruments failed. No one went there. No one sane anyway. Below the coordinates, a final message appeared. Daewon translated it slowly, hardly believing what he was reading. You spoke. We heard. Come. The terminal went dark again. Daewon sat in the silence of his quarters, his mind racing. Someone or something had heard him. After 10,000 years of silence, his words in the ancient tongue had reached across the void and touched something that still remembered. He looked at the coordinates again, memorizing them. The Void Graves, a place of death and mystery, but also perhaps a place of answers. Hana wouldn't approve. Thalmir would forbid it. The council would call him insane. But Daewon knew he had to go. The dead language wasn't dead after all. It had been sleeping, waiting for someone to speak it again, and now something in the darkness was answering. He began making preparations. He would need a ship, a crew, and a very good excuse. The journey would be dangerous. He might not come back. But after 15 years of searching, he finally had proof. The precursors had left something behind. Something that was waiting. Something that was listening, and it wanted him to come find it. The ship was called the Perseverance, and it had seen better days. Its hull was patched in a dozen places, and the engines made a worrying rattling sound whenever they pushed past half speed. But it was spaceworthy, and more importantly, its captain owed Daewon a favor from years ago. Captain Bora stood on the bridge, her gray hair tied back in a practical bun. She was in her late 40s, with the weathered look of someone who had spent most of her life in space. She studied the coordinates Daewon had given her and shook her head. The Void Graves, she said quietly. You know what they say about that place? I know, Daewon replied. Ships disappear. Crews go mad. Instruments fail. But I have to go there, Bora. Something is waiting for me. Bora looked at him for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. You saved my son's life when that plague hit the station 5 years ago. You stayed up for 3 days straight, searching old medical texts until you found a treatment. I owe you. But Daewon, if things get too dangerous out there, we're turning back. Understood? Understood. The crew of the Perseverance was small. Besides Bora and Daewon, there was Tae-young, the security officer. He was a former military man with cold eyes and a laser rifle that he kept clean enough to perform surgery with. He didn't like the mission. He had made that clear from the start. We're flying into a dead zone because of a message on a computer screen, Tae-young said, checking his weapon for the 3rd time that day. This is insane. Noted, Bora replied calmly. Your objection is noted and ignored. Then there was Yuna, the navigator. She was young, barely 25, with an almost supernatural ability to read space. Other navigators used instruments and charts. Yuna seemed to feel her way through the stars, sensing currents and anomalies that computers couldn't detect. There's something strange about the coordinates, Yuna said, studying her displays. The space around the Void Graves is twisted. Like reality is bent there. Can you get us there safely? Bora asked. Yuna smiled. I can get us there. The safely part I can't promise. The journey took 3 weeks. Daewon spent most of that time in his quarters, practicing the ancient tongue. He had refined his understanding of the language. Each word required not just the right sound, but the right intention. The precursors had built meaning into the very structure of their speech. A word spoken with fear meant something different than the same word spoken with hope. Hana had insisted on coming along. Someone needs to keep you from doing something stupid, she had said. Now she worked in the engine room, keeping the Perseverance running. Sometimes she came to Daewon's quarters and listened to him practice the strange, resonant words. It doesn't sound human, she said one evening. It's not meant to, Daewon replied. The precursors weren't human. Their language reflects how they thought, how they understood the universe. And you think you can understand them? He was quiet for a moment. I think they want to be understood. Why else would they answer me? The dream started in the 2nd week. Daewon would fall asleep and see vast structures rising from empty planets, cities of crystal and metal that sang with internal light, and voices, thousands of voices, all speaking in harmony, the ancient tongue perfect and pure. He would wake up with new words in his head, phrases he had never seen in any text. He wrote them all down, adding to his growing vocabulary. On the 20th day, they reached the edge of the void graves. Yuna was the first to see them. "Captain," she said, her voice tight, "you need to see this." The bridge crew gathered around the main view screen. At first, they saw nothing but darkness. Then Bora adjusted the sensors and the shapes appeared. Ships, hundreds of them. Massive vessels, each one larger than the biggest human carrier. They hung in space like silent monuments arranged in perfect geometric patterns. At the center of the formation was a black sphere, so dark it seemed to drink the light around it. "They're precursor ships," Daewon whispered. "A whole fleet." Taeyong's hand went to his rifle. "They're dead. Just hulks, maybe," Yuna said. "But my instruments are going crazy. There's energy there, faint but present, like they're sleeping." The black sphere showed up on no sensors. It was visible only because it blocked the stars behind it. Yuna detected a signal coming from it, a pulse so faint that most equipment would miss it entirely. "It's matching your heartbeat," she said to Daewon. "How is that possible?" He had no answer. But he felt it too, a pull toward the sphere, like something was calling him. "We should leave," Taeyong said. "This is too dangerous. We report what we found and let the council deal with it." "No," Daewon said firmly. "We investigate. Just one ship. We need to know what's here." Bora made the decision. "We approach slowly. Taeyong, you're on full alert. Yuna, keep monitoring that sphere. If anything changes, we run." They chose one of the smaller vessels, though even it was massive compared to the Perseverance. As they drew closer, details became visible. The hull was smooth, unmarked by battle or decay. It looked as if it had been built yesterday, not 10,000 years ago. They docked carefully. Taeyong led the way, his rifle ready. Hana came next, carrying scanning equipment. Daewon followed, his heart pounding. The interior of the precursor ship was cold and dark. Their lights cut through the blackness, revealing corridors that curved in ways that hurt to look at. The architecture followed rules that human minds struggled to process. They found a chamber deep inside the ship. Its walls were made of crystal, and they seemed to glow faintly from within. In the center was a pedestal with a smooth surface. "What is this place?" Hana asked. Daewon approached the pedestal slowly. He could feel something, an energy that made his skin tingle. He reached out and touched the crystal surface. Nothing happened. Then he remembered. The precursors didn't use buttons or switches. They used language. He spoke a word, one of the words from his dreams. It meant something like wake or see or perhaps remember. The crystal beneath his hand grew warm. The ship shuddered. The walls began to glow brighter. A deep hum resonated through the floor, through their bones, through their very cells. "What did you do?" Taeyong shouted. Lights flickered on throughout the ship. The corridors brightened. The hum grew louder, settling into a rhythm that sounded almost like breathing. Daewon stood frozen, his hand still on the pedestal. The ship was responding. After 10,000 years of silence, it was waking up, and he had been the one to wake it. "We need to leave," Bora said urgently. "Now." But Daewon couldn't move. He felt connected to the ship, like his consciousness was spreading through its systems. He could sense power flowing, ancient machines coming back to life, weapons charging. In the crystal walls, images began to appear. Star maps, battle formations, and at the center, the black sphere pulsing like a heart, the master node, the command center for the entire fleet. Daewon finally pulled his hand away. The connection broke, leaving him gasping. "Run," he said. "We need to get back to the Perseverance." They ran through the brightening corridors, the ship humming around them. Behind them, more systems activated. The dead vessel was becoming something else, something aware. And in the darkness of space, other ships began to stir. They made it back to the Perseverance just as the precursor ship fully came to life. From the bridge, they watched as light spread through the massive vessel like blood through veins. Systems that had been dead for millennia were breathing again. "How is this possible?" Hana whispered, staring at the readings on her equipment. "There's no fuel source, no reactor that we can detect, but it's generating enough power to light up a city." Daewon sat in the corner, his head in his hands. He could still feel the echo of the connection, like phantom sensations in a limb that wasn't there. The ship is alive, or something close to it. The precursors didn't build machines. They built partners. A new crew member joined them on the bridge. Hyun was a xenobiologist who had been sleeping when the ship first activated. Now he stood at the view screen, his eyes wide with fascination. Remarkable, Hyun said. The biological and mechanical are merged. Look at those systems. They're not just responding to commands. They're thinking. Tae-young kept his rifle trained on the precursor ship. Can it hurt us? Probably, Daewon said quietly. But I don't think it wants to. He stood up and walked to the communication console. His fingers hesitated over the controls. Then he activated his voice modulator and spoke into the void, using the ancient tongue. The words meant something like "I am here," or "I see you," or perhaps "We are connected." The precursor ship responded immediately. Its lights pulsed in a rhythm that matched the cadence of his words. Then a display appeared on the Perseverance's main screen. Star maps, coordinates, thousands of them. What is it showing us? Bora asked. Daewon studied the map, his hands shaking. Ship locations. There are precursor vessels hidden all over the galaxy, in deep oceans, inside asteroids. Some are in dimensional pockets that we can't normally detect. This ship is showing me where they all are. How many? Tae-young asked. Yuna counted quickly. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. The implications settled over them like a heavy blanket. An entire fleet, sleeping across the galaxy, waiting for the right words to wake them. And Daewon had just proven he could speak those words. Hyun approached the display, studying the ship's structure more carefully. This isn't just a vessel. It's a weapon platform. Those are gun ports, missile tubes, and something else. Some kind of beam weapon that I don't recognize. Every ship in that fleet is armed. Armed for what? Hana asked. Before anyone could answer, the communication system crackled to life. It was an emergency broadcast from the archive station. Thalmir's voice came through, tight with worry. Daewon, what have you done? We're detecting power surges from precursor sites across the sector. Ships are waking up. The Council is demanding answers. They're sending fleets to the void graves. You need to shut down whatever you activated. Daewon closed his eyes. Of course the news had spread. When you wake up ancient war machines, people notice. I can't shut it down, he said into the communicator. I don't think it wants to be shut down. The next hours were chaos. Multiple factions detected the awakening ships and sent their fastest vessels toward the void graves. Everyone wanted to claim the precursor technology. The weapons. The power. Bora kept the Perseverance at a safe distance, watching as ship after ship arrived. Human vessels, Kel cruisers, even the mysterious Ven, who rarely left their home system, sent a delegation. Thalmir arrived with a council fleet. His ship pulled alongside the Perseverance, and he demanded to speak with Daewon face to face. They met in the Perseverance's small conference room. Thalmir's scales were a deep, angry red. Do you understand what you've done? Thalmir demanded. You've awakened weapons that could destroy civilizations. The Council is terrified. Some members are calling for your arrest. I didn't know this would happen, Daewon said. I just wanted to understand the language. And now you're the only one who can control these ships. Do you know what kind of target that puts on your back? Every faction out there wants you. Some want to use you. Others want you dead to make sure no one can command this fleet. Daewon looked through the window at the gathering armada. Dozens of ships now, all circling the void graves like sharks around prey. What do you want me to do? He asked. Thalmir's scales shifted to a worried yellow. Come back to the archive station. Let the Council handle this. We'll find a way to put the precursor ships back to sleep. Before Daewon could answer, alarms blared throughout the Perseverance. Yuna's voice came over the intercom, sharp with fear. Captain, the Black Sphere is doing something. The master node. It's activating. They rushed to the bridge. The sphere at the center of the precursor formation was no longer black. It glowed with internal light, pulsing faster and faster. Energy readings spiked to levels that made their instruments scream. Then it sent out a signal. Not electromagnetic, something else. Something that bypassed normal space and touched directly into the quantum realm. Every active precursor ship responded at once. They moved into new formations, tighter and more defensive. Their weapons powered up. They're preparing for battle, Tae-young said. Battle with who? Bora demanded. Us? Daewon felt it before he understood it. The master node was broadcasting something. A message. A warning. He closed his eyes and tried to hear it through the connection he had made with the first ship. Images flooded his mind. Battles across space and time. A war that lasted thousands of years. And an enemy. Not ships. Not beings. Something else. entities that existed partially in their dimension and partially in others. They consumed civilizations the way humans consumed food. The precursors called them the Devourers. Day One's eyes snapped open. They're not preparing to fight us. They're preparing to fight something that's coming, something they fought before. What are you talking about? Thalmir asked. A new ship appeared at the edge of the system. It wasn't like anything they had ever seen. Its hull was organic, pulsing with dark light. It didn't move through space so much as it made space move around it. Yuna's instruments went wild. That's impossible. The energy readings are off every scale. It's not fully in our dimension. More ships appeared. Dozens of them. They moved toward the void graves with terrible purpose. The precursor fleet responded immediately. Beams of pure energy lanced through space, missiles that bent reality as they flew. The battle began. The gathered factions scattered, their ships fleeing to safe distances. Only the Perseverance stayed close, held in place by Day One's desperate need to understand what was happening. The master node pulsed brighter. It was calling to him. He could feel it. The sphere needed someone to speak the words. Not just any words. The final command, the phrase that would wake the entire fleet across the galaxy. Day One, Hana said, gripping his arm. What's wrong? You look like you're going to pass out. He turned to her, and she saw fear in his eyes for the first time. The master node wants me to finish what I started, he said. It wants me to speak the final phrase, the command that will wake every precursor ship at once. Then speak it, Taeyong said. We need those ships to fight those things. You don't understand, Day One said. The final phrase isn't just words. It's a binding. The speaker becomes part of the system. Their consciousness merges with the fleet. They stop being themselves and become something else. A sacrifice, Yun said quietly. Day One nodded. The precursors built the fleet to defend against the Devourers. But they needed a commander. A mind to guide all the ships at once. That's what the master node is for. It takes a consciousness and spreads it across the entire fleet. Then we find another way, Hana said firmly. But outside the ship, the battle was turning. The precursor ships were powerful, but they were outnumbered. The Devourers kept coming. More and more of them tearing through dimensional barriers. The master node pulsed faster. Its call grew stronger. And Day One knew he was running out of time. The battle raged across the void graves like a storm made of light and darkness. Precursor weapons tore through space itself, while the Devourer ships absorbed the damage and kept coming. Their organic hulls rippled and reformed, healing faster than they could be destroyed. Day One stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching civilizations fight for survival. The gathered fleets tried to help, firing their weapons at the Devourers, but their technology was like throwing stones at a hurricane. Only the precursor ships could truly hurt these things. We need to leave, Bora said for the 10th time. Those creatures are getting closer. If they reach us, our shields won't hold, but Day One couldn't leave. Every fiber of his being was drawn to the master node. It called to him with a voice that bypassed his ears and spoke directly to his soul. The final phrase waited in his mind, ready to be spoken. All he had to do was let go of himself. A new ship appeared at the edge of the battlefield, moving fast and reckless through the chaos. It was human-made, a small courier vessel that had no business being in a war zone. It docked with the Perseverance, and minutes later armed mercenaries burst onto the bridge. Taeyong reached for his rifle, but there were too many of them. They had the crew surrounded before anyone could react. A man walked through the door behind them. He was Korean, like Daewon, with sharp features and cold eyes. He wore academic robes that were stained with something dark. Hello, Daewon, the man said. My name is Jinho. I've been studying the precursors too, but I learned from different sites than you did. Let my crew go, Daewon said calmly. This is between us. Jinho smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. You're right. It is between us. You learned the language from their temples and archives, the places where they recorded their hopes and dreams. But I learned from the dark sites, the places where they recorded their fears. He pulled out a device similar to Daewon's voice modulator. I know what the Devourers are. I know what happened to the precursors. They didn't vanish day one, they ran. They merged with their machines and hid, hoping the Devourers would pass them by. But these creatures don't forget. They don't stop. They consume everything. Then why are you here? Daewon asked. To stop me? To join you, Jinho said. The final phrase requires a strong mind, a complete consciousness. But what if two minds spoke it together? What if we merged with the fleet as partners instead of as one person sacrificing themselves? Before Daewon could answer, a new presence made itself known on the bridge. A woman appeared, literally materializing out of empty air. She wore robes that seemed to shift colors with the light, and her eyes were too old for her young face. The mercenaries raised their weapons, but she waved her hand and they froze in place, unable to move. "My name is Sori," the woman said, "and Jinho is lying to you." "How did you get on my ship?" Bora demanded. "I've always been here," Sori replied. "Watching, waiting. I am what remains of the precursors, a fragment of consciousness preserved in the master node for this exact moment." She turned to Jinho. "You don't want to share the burden. You want the power. You studied the dark sites because you crave control. If you speak the final phrase, you'll turn the fleet into a weapon of conquest, not defense." Jinho's expression twisted. "And what if I do? These devourers will consume everything anyway. Why not use the power while we can? Why not rule what's left?" "Because that's not why the fleet was built," Sori said. She looked at Daewon. "The precursors created the fleet to protect life, not to dominate it. But we failed. We were arrogant. We thought we could fight the devourers directly and win. We learned too late that these creatures can't be defeated by force alone." "Then how?" Daewon asked. "By closing the door they use to enter our dimension. The devourers exist partially in quantum space. They need rifts to fully manifest here. The precursor fleet wasn't designed to destroy them. It was designed to seal the rifts while fighting them off long enough to complete the task." An explosion rocked the ship. One of the devourer vessels had broken through the precursor defensive line and was heading toward the gathered fleets. Human ships scattered, but they were too slow. The creature would reach them in minutes. Sori raised her hand and the mercenaries collapsed unconscious. Jinho tried to activate his modulator, but she moved faster. A gesture and his device crumbled to dust. "You have a choice, Daewon," she said. "Speak the final phrase and merge with the fleet. I will guide you, teach you how to fight, how to seal the rifts. But you must accept that your individual life ends the moment you speak. You become something greater, but also something different." "And if I don't?" Daewon asked. She looked out at the battle. "Then the devourers will consume this system. Then the next. They won't stop until every thinking mind in this galaxy is erased." Hana grabbed Daewon's arm. "There has to be another way. We can evacuate. We can run. To where?" Daewon asked gently. "Sori is right. If these things aren't stopped here, they'll spread. They'll follow us anywhere we run." Bora stepped forward. "I'll do it. I'm older. I've lived a full life. Let me speak the phrase." "It won't work," Sori said. "The master node has already bonded with Daewon. He was the first to speak the ancient tongue in 10,000 years. The fleet recognizes him. It will only accept him." Tae-young checked his rifle even though he knew it was useless. "Then we fight alongside you." "Whatever happens," Yuna nodded. "We didn't come all this way to abandon you now." Hyun was studying Sori carefully. "You said you're a fragment of the precursors. Does that mean there are others? Other fragments in the node?" "Yes," Sori said. "Every commander who ever merged with the fleet left a piece of themselves behind. Their experience, their knowledge. When Daewon merges, he won't be alone. He'll have us to guide him." Daewon looked at each member of his crew. Hana, who had doubted him but came anyway. Bora, who risked her ship on a favor. Tae-young, who was ready to fight impossible odds. Yuna, who saw the beauty in strange spaces. Hyun, who sought to understand life in all its forms. He had spent 15 years studying a dead language. 15 years trying to understand people who had vanished from the universe, and now he finally understood the most important thing about the precursors. They had been willing to sacrifice themselves to protect others. That was why they built the fleet. That was why they left fragments of themselves in the master node, hoping that someday someone would come along who understood what needed to be done. "How do I reach the master node?" Daewon asked. Sori extended her hand. "Take my hand. I'll bring your consciousness there. Your body will remain here, but your mind will travel to the sphere. Once you speak the final phrase from within the node, the transformation will be complete." Daewon looked at Hana one last time. "Tell my parents I'm sorry. Tell them I found something worth dying for." "Don't," Hana said, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't. I have to," he said. Then he took Sori's hand. The world exploded into light. Daewon felt his consciousness separate from his body and rush across space. The master node opened like a flower, accepting him into its core. Inside, he saw them, thousands of presences, the fragments of every precursor who had commanded the fleet. They had been waiting here alone for 10,000 years. They welcomed him home, and Daewon finally understood. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The language wasn't dead. It had just been sleeping. Now it was time to speak. Outside, his body stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, his eyes glowing with internal light. His mouth opened and words began to form. The final phrase, the command that would wake the sleeping fleet and change everything forever. The words came from Daewon's mouth, but they weren't his anymore. They belonged to something greater. The final phrase echoed across space, traveling faster than light, reaching through dimensions to touch every sleeping precursor vessel hidden across the galaxy. On the bridge of the Perseverance, Hana watched as her friend's body stood rigid, his eyes blazing with light that wasn't meant for human eyes. The voice that spoke from his throat was his, but layered with thousands of others, the fragments of ancient commanders all speaking as one. "It's done," Sori said quietly. She was fading, becoming transparent. "I am merging with him now. My fragment will join the others in the node. He won't be alone." "Can he hear us?" Bora asked. "Is he still in there?" "Yes," the voice said, and it was Daewon speaking, though changed. "I can hear you. I can hear everything." Across the galaxy, the fleet woke. Ships rose from ocean floors, shedding water like old skin. They tore free from asteroids, emerging from rock and ice. They phased into reality from dimensional pockets, appearing in empty space where nothing had been moments before. Thousands of vessels. Tens of thousands. An armada that had slept through the rise and fall of civilizations, now answering the call of a single human who had learned their language. In the void graves, the change was immediate. The precursor ships that were already fighting moved with new purpose. They were no longer individual vessels responding to programming. They were extensions of a single consciousness. Daewon's consciousness. He felt every ship, every weapon, every shield. It was overwhelming at first, like trying to see through a million eyes at once, but the fragments helped him. They showed him how to think at this scale, how to process information that would drive a normal mind insane. The Devourers sensed the change. Their ships turned toward the master node, recognizing the threat. They had fought the precursors before. They knew what a unified fleet could do, but this time was different. The precursors had fought defensively, trying to protect their civilization while it ran. Daewon had no civilization to protect except the entire galaxy. He could commit everything to the battle. The fleet moved as one. Ships appeared around the Devourers, surrounding them in perfect spheres. Energy weapons fired in synchronized patterns, not trying to destroy the enemy ships but forcing them into specific positions. "He's hurting them," Yuna said, watching from the Perseverance. "He's pushing them toward the rifts they came through." Hyun understood first. "He's not trying to kill them. He's trying to send them back." The Devourer ships fought with terrible ferocity. Their weapons could unmake matter, turning solid ships into quantum foam. But for every precursor vessel they destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. The fleet was vast, and Daewon commanded it with inhuman precision. He felt every loss. Every ship that died was a small death for him. But the fragments helped him bear the pain. They had experienced this before. They knew how to keep fighting through grief. The rifts began to close. Daewon directed the fleet to fire specific weapons at specific points in space, using technology that bent reality to seal the dimensional tiers. The Devourers tried to open new rifts, but he was faster. For every door they opened, he closed 2. The battle lasted hours. The crew of the Perseverance watched, helpless to do anything but witness. The galactic fleets that had come to the void graves stayed at a safe distance, recording everything. This would be the most important event in recorded history. Finally, the last rift closed. The remaining Devourers were trapped in normal space, unable to access the quantum realm that gave them power. Daewon surrounded them with ships and spoke through the fleet's communication systems. Not in human language, not in the ancient tongue. In mathematics, the universal language of physics and reality. He offered them a choice: leave peacefully or be destroyed. The Devourers understood. They had consumed countless civilizations, but they weren't mindless. They were ancient and intelligent, They had learned over eons when to retreat. The enemy ships turned and fled, moving to the edge of the system before vanishing into faster-than-light travel. They would return someday, but not today, not while the fleet was awake and ready. Silence fell over the void graves. The precursor ships held their positions, waiting for orders that didn't come. The battle was won. On the Perseverance, Daewon's body relaxed slightly. The light in his eyes dimmed but didn't disappear. When he spoke, his voice was closer to normal. "It's over," he said. "The rifts are sealed. The Devourers are gone. Can you come back?" Hana asked, her voice breaking. "Can you reverse this?" "No," Daewon said gently. "I'm part of the fleet now. My consciousness is spread across thousands of ships, but I'm still here, still me, just different." Thalamir's voice came through the communication system. The Kel Overseer had watched the entire battle from his council ship. "Daewon, the galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved us all." "I didn't do it alone," Daewon replied. "The precursors left me the tools. The fragments guided me. And my crew brought me here. I just spoke the words that needed to be spoken." Bora wiped her eyes. "What happens now? You can't stay like this forever, can you?" "The fleet will sleep again," Daewon said. "But not dormant, watchful. I'll keep the ships ready in case the Devourers return. And I'll wait." "Wait for what?" Yuna asked. "For someone to speak to me in the ancient tongue. The language isn't dead anymore. It's alive. And as long as people remember it, as long as they use it, I'll be able to respond. I won't be alone." He turned to face Hana directly, though she knew he wasn't really looking through those glowing eyes anymore. He was everywhere and nowhere, vast and small at once. "Thank you," he said, "for believing in me, for coming with me, for being my friend when everyone else thought I was crazy." Hana sobbed. "I should have supported you more. I should have believed from the beginning." "You believed enough," Daewon said. "That's all that mattered." The master node pulsed once, a gentle farewell. Then Daewon's body collapsed. Tae-Young caught him before he hit the floor. They laid him down carefully. He was still breathing, still alive, but his eyes were closed and his mind was elsewhere. His body would need care, but it was just a shell now. The real Daewon was in the stars, spread across a fleet of ancient ships, keeping watch over a galaxy that finally understood what the precursors had tried to teach them. Some things are worth sacrificing yourself for. Some mysteries once solved change everything, and some languages once spoken can never truly die. The galactic fleets began to disperse. Thalmir sent a message declaring the Void Graves a protected zone. No one would be allowed to disturb the sleeping fleet or attempt to control it. The ancient tongue would be studied but never weaponized. It would be treated as the sacred trust it was. Humanity's reputation changed overnight. They were no longer the young species trying to find their place among older civilizations. They were the people who had solved the greatest mystery in galactic history, the ones who had spoken to the dead and brought them back to save the living. Years passed. The archive station Kepler-7 became a place of pilgrimage. Scholars came from across the galaxy to study the ancient tongue, not to control the fleet, but to understand the precursors, to communicate with the consciousness that watched over them all. Hana visited the Void Graves every year on the anniversary of the awakening. She would take a small ship and approach the master node. She would speak in the ancient tongue, phrases that Daewon had taught her. Simple things, greetings, questions about how he was feeling, stories about what was happening in the galaxy. And the node would respond. The lights would pulse in patterns that she learned to read. Daewon's way of saying he was still there, still listening, still watching. On the 10th anniversary, Bora came with her. The old captain was retired now, but she still flew when it mattered. They sat in the ship together, looking at the black sphere that housed their friend's consciousness. "Do you think he's happy?" Bora asked. Hana was quiet for a long time. Then she smiled. He spent his whole life trying to understand the precursors. Now he is one. In a way, he got exactly what he wanted. The master node pulsed, a gentle rhythm that felt almost like laughter. The fleet slept around them, vast and silent. But not empty. Never empty again. In every ship, in every system, a consciousness waited, ready to wake if needed, ready to speak if called upon. The language was alive. The ships were ready. And the human who had brought them back would watch over the galaxy for as long as stars burned in the void. Daewon had spoken the words that needed to be spoken. And in doing so, he had become something more than human, something ancient and new at once. The dead language had been sleeping. Now it was awake, and it would never be silent again.